Okay, so I wanted to go over a little bit about Module 11, about what you're going to be spending some time doing in the next week or two, depending on how your pace is, depending on how long research takes you. As a reminder, we're getting pretty close to the end of the semester. I know it doesn't feel that way necessarily, but um, all outstanding work, so any projects you're missing, any quizzes you're missing, anything you're missing is due by the Tuesday of finals week, which is May 7th at noon. So I'm going to keep reminding you every week, because if you turn something into me after Tuesday, May 7th at noon, it's not going to count. You're not going to get credit for it. So those of you guys who are missing things, Tuesday, May 7th is that last final day at noon to submit anything. So I know I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I did just want to remind you that after Module 11, we only have 2 more modules left. There is Module 12 and Module 13. One of them is kind of a more self-guided project, and then the last one is talking a little bit about a portfolio. So in these last few modules, I have less step-by-step projects and more kind of creativity opportunities. So thinking back through what we've learned so far this semester, putting it together in a way that you interpret the project. Of course, you can always scroll back through to look at some different techniques, some different videos. And, as always, if you have questions, ask them in that discussion or send me a message, and I will try and help you out. So this particular module has 2 things going on in it. You have a brief 1 to 2 pages research paper about a practicing photographer. I want to make sure that you're asking the right questions and looking at the right research for the next step of this project. So that's the first part of this module. Some of you guys, this might take all week, and I have this module set up that if it takes you 2 weeks, that's okay. You'll still be fine going into that next 2 modules. After this, after you've picked a photographer, you've written about them, you've researched them, you're going to pick 5 of their pictures, and then you're going to replicate them somehow. And some of you guys might use props, or you might stage a photograph in the same way as the original, or you might do some digital manipulation. And I have one example I'll show you of a past student. But a lot of this is going to be really dependent on who you pick as to how you approach this particular piece. We don't have a quiz this week. There is a discussion posting, which I'll go over in just a second. So looking at this, again, I'm in student mode, so you guys can see. I just wanted to highlight this really quickly. The prompt is here, talking about that influential professional photographer. You can choose who it is, but I have listed 25 photographers who are important throughout history, that I would recommend as a place to start if you're totally overwhelmed. Dorothea Lange is a classic. Vic Muniz, he's someone on the other end of the spectrum. He's a more modern photographer, but he's really fascinating. Edward Weston, again, and Ansel Adams, when I think about the history of photography, are huge, powerful figures. So once you've picked someone, you're going to research, and you're going to answer. There are 9 questions in your paper. So I want you to find out about the artist. You can see again what's the photographer's real name, the year he or she was born, are they still alive, their style, what techniques the photographer might have used, who the photographer works for, what type of cameras and lens they work with and why, what type of lighting does this photographer primarily use and why, who are some of your photographer's early influences, are there any interesting stories about this photographer or his or her work, especially some of those older ones, and then what do you like or not like about the work and why you chose the photographer. If I am stuck, I always go and talk about specific pieces. So if you whip through all of this in a paragraph, which this should take you more than a paragraph, that's when I would, the next place to start would be talking about maybe their famous works. Okay, guys, in terms of writing these papers, I am pretty laid back in terms of sources, but if you copy and paste things from a website, it's an automatic F. You have to tell me where you're getting your information, and you either need to put it in quotes if it's a direct copy or rephrase it. So hopefully this is something at this point in your life, it's gone over, but if you have questions about citing things, let me know. There's a couple things I wanted to talk about in terms of sources really briefly. So number one, I'm using Edward Burtynsky and Ansel Adams as 2 examples today. I always start by Googling. It's there. It's everywhere in terms of the internet, right? And the very first thing that happens is I come across his actual website. So Burtynsky is still alive. Even if you have an artist who's dead, like Ansel Adams, there's usually some kind of website that's put up by a foundation if they are an influential photographer. And you'll see, again, all of this is his website. Wikipedia, I go back and forth. It's a good place to start. I wouldn't use it as a place for reliable information. So I'll show you how I could use Wikipedia in that way. You can see there's a gallery that represents him. You can see a TED Talk that he's done. Those would be good sources. So if I go to his website, I click on it. Again, he has these really beautiful industrial landscapes, and he actually has a documentary I think it's called Manufactured Landscapes, and it's all about this. But I can find out about him by clicking on About. So he'll have some kind of artist statement that talks about what his work is about. Again, residual landscape. There's a biography that I can read through. I can find out about him. Again, this is really well put together. This is a user-friendly website. His CV, which I can click on and learn all about what kind of artwork he's had on display. You can see, again, collaborations, lectures, awards, all kinds of things like that. So I can scroll through and find out all this in-depth information about him. There is also a news tab, so I can see where he's appeared in the media, and this would be a great place to click on these articles and read them. So Burtynsky's done a lot of the hard work here and put those resources for you. Then I can click on projects and click under photographs. And you can see, I love Burtynsky's work. He has them in galleries. I was gonna say, these are about these tailings that are these byproducts, I believe, of mining. And you can read all about them. And they're these landscapes. Again, you can see these are uranium tailings, and these ones are nickel tailings. So you can go through and you can look at his images. So that's one really good resource, is the artist website. I have Ansel Adams' website pulled up because, again, he's not alive, but there is an entire website put together about him. I can look. There are slideshows. There's his biography. It tells me a little bit about him. Obviously, he didn't write it or anything, but these websites are really well organized. So you can read all about him here. So that's the very first place I'd start. One other thing I wanted to touch on is that through IECC and each campus's library, we have some really great articles and databases available. I will make sure I put a link up to this so you can see that it's a little bit different if you're off campus. You have to log into Entrada, then you have to click on library and then select find articles, journals, and more. The directions are right on that front page of the library's website. So be aware of that. I'm not requiring you to use any specific sites, but this is a really great source. And if you've had Comp before, you should be familiar with this. So I'm going to click on the left, articles and databases. And not all of these are available off campus, but you'll see some of them are only available on certain campuses. But something like EBSCO, which is usually the one I use the most, is you can go through and you can click off of these. You can deselect or go through and decide which ones you want to search. Something like the Consumer Health Complete isn't really going to help us because that's, specifically about health content. And for an art class, we don't really delve into that. For me, I think it's just easier to select all. But if you guys have slow internet at home and you're using this, I would go through and weed it. Like, you don't have to search through all of these. Next, I'll hit continue, and then I'll search for, we'll say, Ansel Adams. And now I have 2,000 results of articles about Ansel Adams. One thing I always like to go to is this limit to box over on the side. I like to click on limit to full text. Because what happens if I don't click on full text, sometimes I get summaries about articles that are published somewhere else that I can't access. So for me, that's problematic. I want to be able to do this. So I click on this article. It's called The American Landscape Through the Lens of Ansel Adams. And now I can click over here, PDF full text, and I can read this 6-page article that appeared in the American Landscape magazine. Sorry, the New York State Conservationist. So there's lots of really good information out there. Again, I start with Google, I start with the artist's website, and then I can always go on to a source like EBSCO that's available through Entrada. The other thing I was going to show you is if I use Wikipedia. So obviously, I've been around. I'm not saying Wikipedia is this awful, terrible thing, but it doesn't always look professional to use it as a source. If I start with something like Wikipedia, what I do is I actually scroll down. So I've selected Burtynsky. It summarizes him. And there is an article at the bottom that says references, and there's an article that says further reading and external links. This is where I will use Wikipedia as a guide. I will go and I will click, oh, look, there is the human signature, Edward Burtynsky's Anthropocene in pictures. And I will go click on that, and it will bring me an article, and I can read through this and use this instead of using Wikipedia. So I'm not gonna, just giving you an idea. Oh, that's a beautiful image. Anyways, so I know that was a lot of information about where to start with the research, but I wanted you guys to get that overall idea of what I'm kind of looking for. Again, and I'm in student view. Once I've done my research, once I've written my paper, you're actually going to submit it on Canvas. So I am in student view. You see this button up at the top. It says submit assignment. I click on submit assignment. It takes me down to the bottom of this page where it says file upload. It says file. I'm going to choose a file. I will just pick something in my documents to upload. We will just go ahead and upload an old assignment sheet. It's fine. You guys will upload your actual work. And then all I have to do, you can comment if you want to. You can see I've chosen my file to upload. I can resubmit it. That's important to know. If I click out of it, then it goes away. So if I wanted to make sure, I have to go through that again. Now all I have to do is hit submit assignment, wait for it to load. This has a picture in it, so it might take a moment. And now I've submitted it. And again, you shouldn't have any issues if this is a docx or a doc, but let me know. So that is where that 1 to 2 page paper is going. If you have questions about citing, the next link is Purdue OWL MLA. And this is a great website, and it shows you specifically how to format things. So there are lots of different things you can work your way through, but that formatting and style guide, it even has help for these citations. And you say, oh, well, in text citations is what I see the most. What if XYZ, you have questions? Scroll through this, look, and you'll probably find the answer here. So, excuse me, that does open up in a new window. The next part of this assignment, You might get to this week, or this might be something that you take some time and have to work on next week. Is you are taking 5 of those pictures that you've researched through your artist. You've looked at your artist, you've learned about their life, and now, again, you pick 5 of those famous, or, maybe it's some of their lesser known work to recreate. And I have one example used by Nicolas Murray. Frida Kahlo was his subject. There are so many pictures of Frida Kahlo, who's an amazing painter. If you guys don't know who she is, check her out. She has a really interesting backstory. So you're going to take 5 of those, and then you're going to recreate them somehow. Again, I will talk a little bit more about this in a follow-up video. I've talked a lot right now. I listed those photographers again. You're using the same person that you wrote about. You're not changing things up. It's the same person. And you'll decide, am I, again, staging the picture? Am I digitally manipulating things? But the idea is you're using the style and the influences that your original person did. So again, this is an example. This particular image is by Nicolas Murray. Again, it's of Frida Kahlo. This is a very famous picture of Frida Kahlo. So what the student did, so you can see this bright green background, the florals in the background. She's wearing that flower crown. She's sitting on this white bench. This particular student chose, this is a really large shot here, but this particular student chose to use that same green floral background, use that same flower crown, and dress herself in the style of Frida Kahlo. Again, this person used that magic selection tool in order to kind of copy and paste from other pictures. And she made herself, and you can see there's a little bit of that unibrow going on too. She made herself into Frida Kahlo here. So that is how she used Murray's photograph in a way that was hers. So I don't want you to feel like you have to literally recreate the exact same photograph, but there needs to be some tie into the original that we can say, oh, I see how this person got, from here to here. There is a discussion post this week. Again, it might be this week or it might be next week. I want you guys to kind of explain to the class, a little bit more in depth about your process. So again, 5 sentences, you have 5 pictures. That would only be a sentence a picture. You can certainly write more if you want to. You're going to explain how you chose to replicate the original photo. In other words, how did the original inspire you? How would you explain the relationship between the original image and your image to a new viewer? So someone who had never seen your work before or never seen your photographer's work before. Please provide the year and title of each photograph that you've selected to use for your project. And then, of course, respond to 2 other postings. And the very last thing in the module is that help thing. So lots to digest. Definitely start by looking through that list of photographers. And again, they're throughout different time periods in history. So my hope is that you kind of get some exposure to some different moments in the history of photography. You can, again, look for other examples of artists, but make sure there's someone who's significant to the field. I encourage people to use people who are famous, throughout the country or throughout the world, as opposed to regional photographers, because there's more information on them if they're someone who's a little bit more well-known. Other than that, let me know what you have questions. You're going to start with that research, and then when you go to actually make your project, it's just a lot more freedom going into these last few modules, because again, you guys have had good 14 weeks of practicing your photography, practicing those digital skills. So hopefully we're starting to be able to put things together.